Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this great, grand, and beautiful world. I am Reverend Wendy Silvers, and you've arrived at the Awakened Mother Show, where we bring to you uncensored, unfiltered information so that you are both fortified and inspired to take action in a really clear way. And I'm really happy today to have Christina Hildebrand with me. I've known Christina since 2015. We first met up in actually Sacramento and before. And she has created an organization called A Voice for Choice. You like that? My New York accent came out there. A Voice for Choice. And Christina is passionate about ensuring people know what they are putting into their bodies, be it food, air, water, or medications. And for many years, over 12 years, Christina has spent many thousands of hours researching and sharing her knowledge within her local community. And with the growth of big ag and big pharma's influences on US politics, Christina realized that she needed to take this to a different level and educate the masses on their right to informed choice and have transparency regarding what goes into their bodies, which is an beyond full-time job. And especially if you live in the state of California, where there's just always something exciting happening regarding any of the above, what goes into your body, but air, water, filter, medications. And so today we are here because of the California Immunization Registry and a deadline on December 31, 2022 to enter information. And I've received a lot of calls and texts from people asking me, what do I do? What does this mean? How's that going to affect me? So I was like, I'm going right to the source. I am going to Christina, who's here to share everything she knows. And she also has a guide that will help you, simple instructions on what to do. So welcome, Christina.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. Yes, there were those days in 2015 where you were emceeing rallies and things like that.
Yeah, that was
fun times, crazy times, but fun times.
Yes, and here we are.
And here we are,
and
yes.
So much has happened, and we are still here, and we are still thriving. Yes. And that is, that is the best way to address this. We still, keep moving forward, knowing what is possible, and taking actions. And thank you for all that you do with A Voice for Choice, and the many trainings that you have offered, complementary trainings. And so today, will you please speak about what is the California Immunization Registry?
Yep.
And what can people do?
Yes. So the California Immunization Registry has been around for about 15 years, and every state has an immunization registry. And there was one state, it was either Maine or Vermont, that only got their immunization registry together in the last few years. But every other state and all states now have an immunization registry. Mm-hmm. And it's basically a registry where vaccinations, when they're given to people in that state, are input. And every state has a different regulation and statute and law around their immunization registry, and whether it's opt-in, whether it's opt-out, whether doctors have to actually put the information in the registry, whether they don't. And every state, A Voice for Choice Advocacy has just recently, we've been going through every state to try and work out, like, what are the differences in each state? What should be the goal? What should be the sort of top way of doing this, the best way of doing this, best practices. And so we've been looking at the different states, and it's fascinating. Some states, if a child is under a certain age, they don't have to be entered. If they're over a certain age, or under a certain age, they have to be entered. Those types of things. Most of them have an opt-out or an opt-in process. So what that means is, opt-in would be you go to your doctor, and the doctor gives your child or you a vaccination, and they say, okay, do you want me to put your information into the immunization registry, the state immunization registry? And you get to say yes or no. Some states have opt-out, which means that your information will be put into the registry, And you can submit a form, write a letter. Some of them it's more arduous than others, but you can say, I do not want my information in there, and you can remove your information from the system, from the registry. California had an interesting way of doing it, and come January 2023 has changed that slightly. So let me go into California specifically. California, the immunization registry currently up until January 2023, every vaccine that a doctor gives had to be input into the registry if they were if that doctor's office or the company organization they work for, say a hospital or Kaiser Permanente or whatever organization they work for, was part of the immunization registry. So if you as a doctor or your organization had signed up with the immunization registry, you had to input your vaccines in. Now, there are a number of independent doctors mostly that were not part of the immunization registry system, had not signed up for it. And so if you went to them and had your vaccines given by that doctor, they would not enter them into the immunization registry. They would still have them in your patient records, but they wouldn't be in the immunization registry.
Mm-hmm.
The key piece here is if a doctor is part of the immunization registry, and this carries over next year, if they're part of the immunization registry, which every doctor giving a vaccine as of January 2023 will have to be, they have to tell you when they're giving you the vaccine or after they've given you the vaccine, I'm going to put your information into the California Immunization Registry.
Mm-hmm.
You would think at that point that they would say, do you want that? Do you not want that? Or here's the way you can opt out. There is no way in California to opt out of having your information put into the registry if you're given a vaccine in California. And as of 2023, this is the change in the law. Every vaccine given in California will be input into that registry. You have to be told your information is going into that registry. But again, there is no way to say, no, I don't want it to go in there. And there's no real way to opt out. So we have in California a way to lock the information. And we highly recommend that you do that if you have information in the registry. So we'll get into locking and right, what that entails. But what the locking mechanism does is it basically says, I don't want my information shared with third parties. And we'll go into what those third parties can be, but it does not take your information out of the system. So your data is still in the registry, and CDPH and other sort of government entities can go and look at it and can run statistical analysis on all of that stuff. But what you are doing is you're locking it from third parties getting at it. So when I say third parties, schools, WIC, Women and Infant Program, nursing homes, I'm trying to think what other HHS entities, basically people who want to see who are allowed to see your vaccination information can download the information. So let's just take a school because that's what many of us are dealing with. If your child goes to school, mm-hmm, and the nurse can go in and look up, Christina Hildebrand, date of birth, and can look at the immunization registry and see what vaccinations I have been given. And I have been given in California that have been input into the system. So whatever shows up under me is what the nurse can get access to, unless I've locked my information. If I've locked the information, it says, sorry, this information is not accessible to you. Mm-hmm. Now, the government in California says, well, we're creating this and we want to have everyone's vaccination information in there so that we have a record of it, but also that you have an easy way to access it. So it doesn't matter what doctor you go to, it doesn't matter who you go to get your vaccinations, it's all in one place and you can download it and the school can download it. I personally think it's a huge violation of privacy. And, I believe we should be able to have an opt-in, but at the very least, we should be able to have an opt-out, mm-hmm, that removes, all of your personal information with regards to the vaccines. That is not the case in California. Mm-hmm. And so come January, all of the vaccine records going forward will be in the immunization registry if they're given in California. People ask me, a really common question that I've been asked is, well, what happens about my vaccine records from the past? Like if I went to one of those doctors that wasn't part of the immunization registry, will those get uploaded to the system? And the answer is, I am pretty sure that's what they would like to happen. I don't think it can happen in most cases right now. Now, I say that hesitantly because one of the things we know they want to improve, that we've seen a request for a proposal to improve the immunization registry, the California Immunization Registry. So we know they want to make improvements. But the one key thing that we know is that the immunization registry is starting to talk, or they want it to be able to talk to your electronic health records.
Mm-hmm.
Every doctor these days uses electronic health records. There aren't doctors anymore that use pen and paper. And so all of your records, your health records, when you go to a doctor, are in an electronic format.
Mm-hmm.
The CAIR registry, and this is where we don't have a good understanding of this, but the CAIR registry pulls from the information in your electronic health records. So a doctor goes in and, as I said, I don't know how this works exactly, inputs your vaccination information and clicks on something that the immunization registry then goes, oh, thank you for that information, and inputs it into the registry. And it's searching it, it's matching it by your name, your birth date, either your maiden name or the child's mother's name. So it's looking for you as an identifier in their registry that it can link up the information for. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there aren't duplicative records. So, if I'm in there as Christina Hildebrand and I'm in there as Christina Elizabeth Hildebrand, and I got a vaccination when I lived in, one place versus I lived in another place, it may not see those as the same person. And so it may have duplicate records. It's a very messy system right now. It's a mess. There's a lot of duplication. We know 107% of children of the childhood population in California is in that registry. So we know there's people in there that shouldn't be in there or that are duplicates. So it's a bit of a mess. But you have to recognize that the goal of this registry and the goal of the government is to get every vaccine into it that has going to be given in California, and in my perspective has ever been given in California to anyone. So
Wow.
Yeah. And it's the first step to vaccine passports, is, our perspective. And that's what we sort of talked about when this bill went through the legislature. We are still looking, we asked for amendments to make it opt out. We didn't think we would love it to be opt-in. We didn't think we could get that, but that you could be fully opt out. One of the pushbacks we got was, well, this information is used by the health department to understand vaccination rates. So for example, with the COVID vaccine, the number of people that are vaccinated in California comes directly from the immunization registry, because every COVID vaccine was input into the immunization registry. There were doctors that you couldn't apply for more vaccines to get more supply of vaccines if you didn't have all of the ones that you had ordered previously input into the immunization registry. So the COVID vaccine database in the immunization registry is pretty complete, in my opinion, other than people who got them from out of state, but those given in California, it's pretty complete. So what we asked for in our amendments was, okay, if you're not going to let people opt out completely, then allow them to anonymize their data, so that rather than having Christina Hildebrand and whatever information, it is anonymous person, and so that how many vaccines were given, this was given, maybe even keep that it was given in where in California, or some very basic information, but that my Christina Hildebrand birth date, any other race, all of those, that information gets removed. But we haven't gotten there yet. We're asking for that as a bill this year, and I don't know that we'll get it, because it's such a politicized issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Does it make any sense to introduce a bill?
We're looking to. I mean, we're trying to. It's we don't know. It's very hard to get a bill introduced in California, especially on these issues. I did want to. I don't know if you want to make me a co-host so I can share my screen.
Yes.
But I wanted to kind of go through the locking
Absolutely.
form, because there
Yes.
are some things that people have asked me about, and they're like, I get emails all the time asking, do I have to fill this in? Do I not have to fill this in?
Yes, I too wanted to ask you, what about one of the questions that I've received number is, what about if you haven't received any
Yes.
shots?
So if you have not received any vaccinations in California, you don't, or being given a TB test. The TB test is the other thing that is kept in the CAIR database. So if you were a teacher, for example, and you had to get a TB test, that would be in the immunization registry, most likely. If you have not received, or your children have not received any vaccines or any information or any TB test, you don't have information in there, most likely. And I would not go in and lock it or do anything with it. I say most likely because the immunization registry takes information from hospital births and birth certificates. So your name, your address, your mother's name, if you're a child, may be in the immunization registry if you are if you were born in California. And I haven't been able to work out how much of that is actually being input, but if you go to the CAIR website, it says that that's how they're getting their information. So I wanted to start off with this this page, and this is our A Voice for Choice advocacy page. If you go to Empower Yourself, and there's a whole bunch of issues, but you can go to, if you go to our main website, which is avoiceforchoiceadvocacy.org, go to Empower Yourself and then lock your California immunization registry data. That will bring you to this page, which goes through much of what I've talked about just now. And in this page at the end, there is the link to the CAIR form. So if you click on that link, it takes you to the request to lock your CAIR record. I just want to go through this because there are areas of this record which, as I said, some people are like, what do I say? What do I say here? So patient information, this is all, you have to put it in there. First name, middle name, last name, date of birth, gender, and then your CAIR patient ID. That's optional. If you have a record in CAIR, and for example, if you have a physician and you're in your physician's office and they have uploaded your vaccine information, then they would know what your ID is. What that does is make sure that it's actually your information that they're locking, that it's relevant to you. Patient street address, city, zip code, phone number. Then relationship to patient. Are you the parent or self? Choose whichever one that is. If you're the parent of a minor, you want to put in your first name and last name. That would likely be the same. It would not be the same as the patient information. So just to be clear, the patient information, if you're doing this for your child, would be your child's information and date of birth and your child's address, which may be yours or not. So if you're a parent guardian, this is where you put your name in here. Sorry. This is where you put your name in here if you're a parent or guardian. And then your child's healthcare provider. So this is required. And people have come to me and said, well, my doctor left, is no longer practicing, or we no longer have a physician, or I've changed physicians and I haven't been given any vaccines with this doctor, but I had gotten vaccines with a previous doctor. Like, who do I put in here? And my answer to you is, I don't think it really matters. And if you have multiple of them, just put one in. What they're looking for is somebody who matches your information. Basically, they're trying to get as much information as possible so that you can get the information or they can get the information to kind of match you up and make sure that they're locking the correct information. Then you need to electronically sign with your full name, and then you submit a request to lock your CAIR record. Now, one key thing here is that you do not get an email saying, we received your information to lock your CAIR record. And you also don't get a notification, or sorry, you do get that, and it says your information will be locked within 5 to 7 days. But what you don't get is a email in 5 to 7 days, or any form of notification in 5 to 7 days saying, yes, your record has been locked.
Mm-hmm.
So my recommendation is to reply, and I believe that email comes from this email at the bottom of this form, CAIR Help Desk CDPH CA Gov, is to, after, set yourself a reminder after 5 to 7 days to send that email an email and say, could you please let me know if my information has been locked? And they usually get back pretty quickly and say, yes, it has, or no, it hasn't. But there is no confirmation that it's been locked. So I like to say, go get your confirmation yourself.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I think that was the main piece. Oh, the other piece that I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Again, you can go to avoiceforchoiceadvocacy.org and then go to empower yourself. And that has the drop down of all the different things, but that is in there. The one other thing that is changing as of it actually is in effect now, which we had a feeling last year when the bill came through, there's a piece of the bill that relates to school assessments. And we had continually asked the author, the sponsor of the bill, what is this thing? What are school assessments? Like, what are you trying to get into this bill that we don't know about? And because currently, or up until probably October, the way a school, so if I were a school nurse looking for Christina Hildebrand's records, I can do it a number of ways. I can either put Christina Hildebrand and date of birth in, and it will pull up all the Christina Hildebrands with that date of birth. I can also do it, if I don't have that much information, I can put in Chris, HIL, and all of the people in the immunization registry that have a name that includes Chris and a last name that includes Hill, whatever version of those will come up. And so they can access a lot more information than just Christina Hildebrand. What the new thing that came out in somewhere November, December-ish is what's called a school roster. And that fact that schools can now go in and search for each individual child. Let's say they take first grade and they put in all of their children who are in their first grade, and they can run it all at once. And they can see, okay, out of my first grade class, yep, we've got everyone. Oh, this person doesn't have the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. Oh, we've got 2 people up here that don't have the hepatitis B vaccine. We've got, and they can pull the whole class as a roster. And that's what we believed they were getting at when they said student assessments, because it's, to me, I understand that, if I say to the school, I've lost my medical records, my vaccine records, and they say, oh, well, we can pull it up on the immunization registry, and they do that, that's one thing. But when they're actually going in and they don't need parental consent to download your child's vaccination records or to attempt to download your child's vaccination records. And so they're creating these rosters of every class that they can see, and come January, when everyone's vaccinations will have to be recorded in the registry, they will be able to say, oh, Timmy hasn't had his second MMR. Let me run it again in January. Oh, yep, he's there. Now he's got his second MMR, or he still hasn't got it in his second MMR. Well, we're going to have to throw him out of school because he doesn't have it. So it makes it much more interactive. If your child's information is locked, they cannot access that information. And so to me, even if my child was fully vaccinated, I personally wouldn't want a school nurse going in and being able to access that information. Like, to me, that's a privacy. That is medical privacy laws. The CAIR registry is covered by, it doesn't fall into HIPAA, because HIPAA has exclusions for if it's being done for I don't remember the exact wording, but I've looked it up. If it's being done for sort of health purposes or auditing purposes, or not, they can access it. It is not a FERPA violation, which is the school privacy violation, because the school nurse is downloading it. If the school nurse then publicizes it to the teacher or the whoever else, the class or whatever, that Timmy's not vaccinated, that's a FERPA violation, a school education privacy violation. But the nurse is allowed to, under HIPAA and FERPA, is allowed to download this information unless you've locked it. And that's why locking the information is so important. You know, and it's not, you know, people have said, well, there's a deadline of December 30th. You need to do it today. And if you don't do it by December 30th and you're watching this on January 3rd, do it on January 3rd. Like, do it as soon as possible. The key piece there is, you know, if you have not had any vaccinations in California, you do have to weigh out that risk to benefit of, do I put a lock on it? Is that going to flag something? And that's the question I've been asked. And I have no idea if it's going to flag something. If you put in, you know, I want my information locked and you don't have a record in there, does that create a record for you and says, you know, your information is locked, but there's no information in there? That's you know, that's where we're all about informed choice. I'm giving you the information. You need to make that decision. I can't give you a right or wrong answer there, because, you know, if there is information in there, then you want to lock it. So it's really that balance of what you do personally.
Well, I think, you know, there's like part of me is like, well, if you did know, what would you do? And who can we contact to find out? Because there's, from experience, we know, just like the school assessment leads to the school person being able to download information without a parent's consent.
And I will say, you can go into CAIR and you can request to look at what records are in the database. Again, I don't know that you have to upload I haven't done it, because you have to upload your driver's license or some form of documentation. I'm like, I don't need you having more information on me either. So I haven't done that. The other place that you can go is if you have an MD or DO, the people that give vaccinations, you can go, if you're in their office, you can ask them, could you please look up if I have any records on file? And they can look it up for you without flagging anything. So they can do the same. So the one place, when I say you lock your data is locked to all these third parties, but your physician always has access to your vaccine information. So that is not locked. When you lock it, you don't lock your doctor out of it. Your doctor and CDPH still have access to the information.
And what about for people that use clinics? I mean, how does they don't have a relationship with the doctor in the same?
Yeah, you should be able to ask the clinic, you know, somebody at the clinic, you know, could you look up my information? It's not something that I have extensive knowledge on. So anybody watching this, if you've done this, feel free to send me an email and let me know what happened, because I'm always looking for more information. It's not something that I've done, but anywhere that gives vaccines should be able to look at the database and say, yep, you've got information in there, or no, I can't find any records on you.
Yeah, this is really, it's very slippery slope, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really slippery slope. And it's, you know, I'm the type of person, I can see things from the really worst side of things, which is, this is the beginning of a vaccine passport, and it can completely do what we were scared of during COVID, which is close people out. I mean, it's China, you know, it's your green and red pass and you're allowed to go places and not places. I can also see it from the perspective, you know, I look at it through rose-colored glasses and go, well, they're just trying to create a database that has the information so that if anyone loses their vaccine records, there's there. I don't think we're there. Okay, I really don't. I think we're much closer to this side. How close to this side we are, I can't tell you.
Yeah.
But it's California, so we're closer than most states to that side of things.
California and New York. I saw something, and I haven't been able to retrack it. But do you remember when Biden was speaking about people that protest could be arrested? So then I saw something in New York that Governor Hochul was supporting this, and I'm looking to see if it's actually, you know, an executive order. Is it something that's been enacted? Like, where is this coming from? Because I thought that was a really curious step to take, which really, you know, between, you know, seeing that side, the closer to China side, and the rose-colored glasses, that would be closer to the China side.
Yep.
So I'm really interested to learn. So okay, so for parents, I mean, so many parents in California have pulled their kids out of school, they've
Yes.
moved out of state
Yep.
Because of this, not because of the CAIR, but because of the other things that have happened.
Yep.
So if your child doesn't go, if your child is homeschooled, what do you recommend?
I would still, if they have been vaccinated in California, I would still lock the information. It's information that you don't need somebody else to see. And it whether it's on purpose or inadvertently. I'm a big privacy advocate. I don't want any of my information anywhere. And, some people don't feel that strongly about privacy and say, well, they've got it all on me anyway, so why should I care? I can, they can track me, they can find me. And it's true. I agree with that. But maybe I'm naive in saying I really want all of my information not shared with anyone. But I do think there is an amount of data. Why give them more? Why give them stuff that they can use or that can be used against you in some future realm?
So what do you recommend to adults? What do you recommend?
So many adults haven't been vaccinated, or I shouldn't say many. There are many adults that have been vaccinated in our movement. There are many adults that haven't been vaccinated in the last 15 years. Unless you've been getting a flu shot or you've turned 65, where the next load of vaccines you're sort of bombarded by your healthcare professional to get vaccinated. Most people don't get vaccinated, in their adult life, unless you're getting a flu shot or COVID, obviously. But so my recommendation is look at when the last time you were vaccinated in California was. And if that was in the last 15 years, then think about where you got vaccinated and whether you think that would have been uploaded. Or alternatively, for example, if you're a member of, let's just take CAIR, because CAIR is will input all your information from all your previous doctors into our system. They do that very happily. And so many people, when they go to a new doctor's office, will bring their records with them. And so they will upload prior vaccination information into their electronic health records. So it's, the doctor will in the first intake be like, okay, what vaccines have you had and when did you have them? Oh, you have your vaccine records. Great. And then they put them in their electronic health records. If that has happened, my guess is that there is a good chance that your previous vaccines have been uploaded into CAIR because of this electronic health record system of sort of pushing that information. I don't know, as I said, I don't have a good feel for how prevalent that is and how much that's happened, where they've taken not just the vaccines that have been given, but previous vaccines that have been given and input it. But I do think that in the future will be something that they're going to look to really get the immunization registry to talk to all electronic health software programs and get that and sort of extract the data.
So would you recommend that an adult that hasn't in the past 15 years locked their records, or if there aren't any records? Or would they be, if they were born in California and got childhood vaccines, would that be uploaded? I mean,
I don't think your childhood, unless if you're over 20, 25, I don't think your childhood vaccine records will have been uploaded.
Right.
Because they're just, those were paper records. They're not, unless you have come with all of your vaccine documents from when you were a child, which most people don't show up with that information. Unless you show up with that, maybe, but I don't think most people show up. They say, were you vaccinated as a child? Yes or no. You don't look for the actual records. So I don't think that would be the case. I think, again, it's look at your health records and how much information. The other thing that you can do is you can always ask your doctor for a complete copy of your health records, and that will have in it what information they have. It will be a printout of all of your health records, and or that sometimes they send it electronically, and you can go through that to see what vaccine records they have on file. And then you can have an understanding of, oh, okay, I don't have any vaccine records in their document, so it's unlikely to be in there. Or, well, actually, I gave them all of that information at the beginning. That was 20 years ago. Okay, not likely to be in there. Or it was, 2 years ago, more likely to be in there. But I don't have an answer because I don't know the inner workings of that. But I strongly believe that in the future, they will try and pull everything in as much as possible.
So in summary, what I'm hearing you say is that if your child has been vaccinated, that it makes sense to go. I mean, even if you are somebody who abhors, any kind of surveillance or, peeking into your life, you get to determine the risk benefit at that. But that what this allows is that only the doctor and what part of HHS would or CDPH would need this?
So they're looking at it from a statistical perspective. So, X number of people have been vaccinated in this area or among this racial group or in this, in this time frame. So they're supposedly looking at it from that perspective. But there's also a piece of this immunization registry, which if you have been, like if you've gotten your first dose of something, that it triggers, oh, this person should get their second dose. Now let's send them a postcard. And that postcard, I believe, can come from either CDPH or it may also come from your doctor's office. So both of them have access to a sort of trigger of this person got the first dose and they need to get the second dose. So CDPH can also send you those types of notifications.
Okay. So the parent gets to decide whether they want to disclose this information. And are you suggesting that it's better that they lock it than not lock it?
I think if you have records in the database, you 100% want to lock it.
Okay, great for that clarity.
If you don't know that you have records in the database, try and find out if you do. Okay, and you can do that by going to your doctor and asking them. You can do it by requesting the information from the CAIR website, but you do have to upload a piece of identification, like a driver's license or a passport, and that's what prevented me from doing it because I didn't really want them to have that extra bit of information on me.
Right.
So, or if you're in a place like I have not been vaccinated in California, okay, but I don't know that at least a basic piece of information is in that registry for some reason. Because I have had a TB test. So, is that in there? I don't know. I personally have not pulled the information because I don't want to give them that information. So, then I sit there going, okay, do I lock it? Do I not lock it? Do I want to flag myself or do I not want to flag myself? And that's the question that each individual just has to make for themselves. I don't have an answer because I don't know whether it raises a flag if you lock it and you're not in the database, whether they create a piece of information for you because they're like, oh, this person requested it to be locked. We don't have that person currently, but if they get vaccinated in the future, we'll match them up with that locking. For just to give clarification too, people were just like, oh, well, nobody knows that I'm not vaccinated for COVID. I can guarantee you they know who's vaccinated for COVID, and therefore they know who's not vaccinated for COVID. The kids that are being born in California today, and if you live in California your life, they know exactly whether you've been vaccinated or you've not been vaccinated because they have your birth certificate, unless you're living off the grid under a rock, they have your birth certificate, they have, some form of information from you. They have if you were born in the hospital, they'd have the pre-screening, the blood test that they do on
the heel.
The heels prick, exactly. Yeah. So this is all information that they've got. So my perspective is a child born today in California, they will be able to tell whether you are or you are not vaccinated. And so that's that piece of it is the piece that is really a question.
Great. Okay. Well, that's a lot of information to digest. And so if you have a child that's been vaccinated, better to lock it than not to lock it.
Yes.
And if you are uncertain about whether that information exists, go to the doctor, the MD, the DO, or the clinic and ask for your records, which doesn't alert. And that this doing this safeguards somebody at a school, or perhaps a camp, or
Yep.
some other place, from just going into the system and seeing whether or not the child has received that. And also that the jury is out right now regarding, will you not putting in that information be a red flag?
Right.
And so so it's really an interesting place, but that if you do, but if your child's records, have been entered into the electronic data file, to absolutely do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really,
yeah. And I think, to me, even people who are all for vaccines and have fully vaccinated their children, even more so, my perspective is, if you have any feelings towards privacy and you want, consumer privacy, you want your medical information, and I consider medical information one step above consumer privacy. If you're the type of person that locks or deletes your information from Google or Yahoo or, any of the big corporations, or you want to unsubscribe from something and have your data deleted, this is a place where you should be concerned too, because this is your medical records or your child's medical records. I mean, it's really, to me, just a basic privacy concern. And here in California, we have the strictest privacy laws of any state from a consumer protection perspective. And so to me, this is part of that. It's really part of that. And we need to, and it's why we want to bring forward a bill to allow this to be an opt-out, because everything else that California has stood for from a privacy perspective says opt out, or even as far as opt in. You have to agree to have your information input into a database.
Yeah. Thank you, Christina. This is really, it's so helpful for people. And I will make sure, I'm going to check and see if there's anyone that has a question. If you want to put your question in the chat, and then Christina will answer it, and we'll make sure also that you have access to Christina and all the information, because it's time sensitive. This is a time sensitive issue.
Yeah. And we'll put the recording up so that people who weren't able to attend can watch it.
Absolutely. So I'm not seeing any questions at the moment, but I know that you've been really thorough, and I'm feeling really like redundant, because I want to go back and just, if you haven't gotten any shots, then it is your choice. You get to, between you and your higher power, or whatever you call it, you get to decide whether you even want to put your information in there if you're an adult. And also, concurrently, what if you have a child who hasn't gotten anything? So
same thing. Like, I think, as I said, for a child, they are more likely to be in there because they take their birth records and start putting information in there just as a sort of placeholder. Mm-hmm. And so, but again, if your child has not been vaccinated, do you want to raise a flag saying, I'm locking my data, but there's no data in there? Mm-hmm. And so I don't know the right answer to that. I really don't. I don't know whether it makes sense to or not. I think I personally probably would leave it be and not put in any information. I'd be curious to know if my child's records, even just a placeholder record was in there. And so I would at that point go to the doctor, my doctor's office or a clinic, and just ask, anywhere that gives vaccinations, and ask, could you look up my records and see if I'm in the registry, if my child has any information in the registry, and see whether there's any information in there.
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying. And I think about, I future cast for a minute, and I wonder if you don't put that information in, and you haven't received anything, and maybe you're not in the system, if you start to get those little postcards, since the birth certificate is there,
Yes.
Or what if you've gotten married in the state of California and that information is listed there?
Yeah.
Do they send you little postcards? Oh, input your info, make it all nice, and get a gym membership, get a get a free meal, get a Happy Meal.
Yeah. Well, that is, I mean, I think that's part of what's coming. We've seen it with COVID. It was the first time that vaccinations really got incentivized. And I think that will happen more and more in the future. I think this database is a perfect marketing tool. While, Pfizer and Merck can't access it, hopefully, but it is a perfect marketing tool for CDPH to, oh, we need you to get the HPV vaccine, go get a $20 gift card or a boba, or whatever the kids the thing is of the day that the kids are going to be incentivized by.
Yeah, and I wonder if elected officials are able to access this database.
They're not, no.
Okay.
No, it's only people at CDPH that are, and they have to have clearance. I mean, there is some privacy around it. They have to have clearance to be able to get access to the data. And, there are people that just run statistics on it that don't have access to the personal data. So they don't know, Christina or Joe or Wendy or whoever is in who the data relates to. But the data is there. And I mean, one of the big pieces which we didn't talk about is, we have had so many breaches of databases, of government databases, and anyone who is an immigrant who's in there should be concerned. Anyone, who values their privacy should be concerned. I mean, just recently we had medical data breaches, we had ICE data breaches, we had the gun last year, anyone who owns a gun or something like that whole database was breached. Anyone who thinks that the government databases don't get breached is not is not watching the news. It happens. And so it's, to me, you should be able to opt out. If you don't want to be in the situation where your information could be breached, you should be able to opt out of it. But
I absolutely agree. And I also think about even LastPass, which is that vault for your passwords was breached. And I also, the opting out option. So if you're in a state of emergency, which is supposedly ending February 2023, well,
we'll see. We'll see. There may be another one by then, right?
Yeah. So does that also mean that you don't have that option? I mean, I think opting out should be available to everybody across the board for any.
There isn't, with the immunization registry, there is not that option at all. You cannot opt out of it. You cannot fully opt out of it. You can, as we've talked about, you can lock it, but you cannot fully opt out of it.
Interesting. Well, is there any other piece of information that you would like to impart?
I don't think so. I think we've covered it all. I mean, I think we got a lot. We got through a lot.
We did. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Christina.
And thank you, Wendy. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, thank you. As always, thank you for your specificity and clarity in imparting this information. And thank you for everybody who's with us. And you will have access to Christina to reach her at avoiceforchoice.org. And you'll have access to reach me so that we can stay connected. And thank you for all who have joined us. And happy holidays.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Bye.